learning Torah, left an impact. A child sees. You never know, the life impact that it leaves on a child.
Okay, we're here with Rabbi Avraham Friedman, the Rav of Coral Springs Chabad Kehillah, the only from Kehillah here, really. And we are here as part of the playlist in regards to, we're trying to interview people in regards to Torah, to find what people have a specific niche in Torah, a connection that this is what they live with, this is what they live by, gives them the koich and the koch. This is what they focus on. So that's what we want to ask today, what that it means to you, and how did you come to it yourself?
So it's obviously A'inim Klali and a very important subject and topic. When I mean important, it's critical. Critical meaning it's the basic life connection of a Yid. Begins with Limud Torah. Chutz darauf, das ist a Mitzvah min Torah. V'gisa bo yom v'layla is a chiyuv min Torah. I don't know if people realize that. I'm sure some do and some don't, but it's a chiyuv min Torah every single day, depending on a person's sort of occupation. But it's a chiyuv, a kol panim b'boker and b'layla to learn Torah. That's in terms of its chiyuv. Before we get maybe to the personal part of it, I would say in today's world, especially when there is the exposure and the interaction to the world at large, as has for the most part never been this way in society, other than maybe for Yechidim, but today everybody and anybody interacts, from a person who tries to not interact to a person who is interacting because they want to interact or whatever it is, but there is an exposure as has never been before. So the importance of maintaining that connection and counterbalancing our information that we get from elsewhere, but to understand and think as a way as Torah wants us to think is highly important today, to be from a Yid, to have from a Kinderlach, and it happens to be apropos to the parsha this week, which Parshas Chukas, where Chassidus talks about the Rotzui and the Shuv. The Rotzui and Shuv is a fundamental necessity for a Yid. There's the Rotzui, the Shuv. And the Rotzui very much comes about through Limud Torah. Limud Torah is what gives us the Rotzui, as is explained in Chassidus with regards to the Porah Aduma, the Eish, and the Mayim, and so on. So that's on a somewhat of a general level. I could say on a personal level, and when I say personal, it's also a little bit broader, is that being by the Rebbe's Farbrengens and having the schus, we all have the schus to learn the Rebbe's Torah and see videos and so on, but there's also the extra schus that Baruch Hashem spent probably thousands of Farbrengens, hundreds, thousands of Farbrengens by the Rebbe. I don't think there was a Farbrengen that went by where the Rebbe didn't speak about a Sofa B'Limud Torah. We knew the Mises that we heard of, that the Rebbe had an extra moment. It was Limud Torah. I mean, that was. I remember hearing from Dr. Weiss an interview where he was asked, what does the Rebbe do, sort of, on his personal time. I don't remember the exact lashon that was used in the question, but he said, and this is after the Rebbe gets letters, as we heard, second to the President of the United States and so on. He was asked what the Rebbe does with most of his time. Again, I don't remember the exact nusach. It could be looked up. It's either on Gem. And he said the Rebbe sits and learns Torah. So Allah has kama v'kama, that it's something that is so important and necessary for us. So that's one answer to your question. If you want to follow up, I have more things to say, but if you want to follow up with another question, because I'm telling you.
So just to be misakim, so meaning in other words, are you saying that that nowadays more than ever there has to be, because there's lots of shuv more in human nature nowadays, there's lots of shuv to everything else, there has to be the constant of shuv more than ever for Torah. Constant pumping in.
Yeah.
So I guess this part, this type of idea, or these interviews, the kind of things, it just adds to this.
To the geschmack, to the
To
desire,
the shuv, right? It brings that world in.
Yeah, because today the shuv is definitely what I mean by the shuv. So the Hasbon in Chassidus is the Rotzui. There are many areas, and I recommend, by the way, that in the Gutnik Chumash, Rabbi Miller, who has a very beautiful way of writing things. He has an elegant way, a nice way of writing and explaining things. So in Parshas Chukas, in Sparks of Chassidus, he writes up very nicely the Rotzui V'Shuv and its application and expression in various areas of life, personal life, in the Welt at large, in Torah and mitzvahs and so on. He writes it up very nicely. So today the shuv, meaning the avodah ba'olam hazeh, which is one of the explanations of the shuv, is very predominant, and it could very easily lose its connection to kedusha. Again, getting a reinfallen, and reinfallen doesn't necessarily have to mean in the worst way. You could be a frum yid and you lose as the language that he uses in his art. It becomes stagnant. It could become, of course, there are many madregas and levels. But even a frum yid, they could lose its chayis and lose its life. So the rotzu is critical, is necessary, because once it loses its life, as the Rebbe says in many sichas, you don't know where it goes, and especially in the ashpah of the kinder. When the kinder see that it's exciting to you and it's meaningful to you and it's important to you, it's a priority to you, that's has more impact on the kids in some real way than even sending them to cheder or who they hang out with. They're all important, but that's a critical part of it. So thus is thus, and to highlight that point, I remember when I was a young child. I must have been maybe 4 years old, 5 years old at the time. So just a personal story. My father passed away at a young age, and we lived in Borough Park at the time, and the landlord, as they call them, the person who owned our home, they lived on the second floor, we lived on the first floor, was a yid, a satma chosid, a very vadam yid. In fact, he was a shtickle relative. What I mean by that is he was my uncle's brother. My uncle's brother through marriage. That was my aunt married this fellow's brother. His name was Reb Lemu Schwartz. He was a real Yid Abal Chesed, a Varam Yid. So one of the memories I have as a child, and I don't remember many things from that time when 4 or 5 years old was gedenken, but it tells you that it leaves an impact, is that Shabbos afternoon, he would sit with a Gemara, mit a bissel Weintrauben, with some grapes, and he had a child that was my age. We were playing, but he would call us over, and he would give us some chocolate. But that imagery of him sitting Shabbos, he owned a company. He was a phenomenal mensch. But that imagery that he was sitting b'menucha Shabbos afternoon, learning Torah, that Pashat left an impact. So you see that the Dian Yodin was Hakin Zet, these things that a child sees, you never know, the life impact that it leaves on a child. So that's a bit of a personal story that we should take to heart.
Sure, we can all relate to that, of our experiences. So fine. So I want to get to now, by you personally, besides the fact that you are a Rav of a Kehillah and you are a Shliach here, as well as Shliach of the Rebbe, I'm sure in your own personal avodah you have your own geschmack, unique kasha that you have in something in Torah, a chelik in Torah, something specific. That's what I am curious about.
It's a good question. So there might be more than one answer to that question.
I'm sure you're very busy, so I'm sure it's a hard thing. It takes years to develop, in many cases.
Yeah. So I'll say. So the answer to that is mikama kivunim. But I would call myself, within my level, I would call myself more a Baal Nigla. What I mean to say is not that I'm a, from the Goyim is my name, far from it, but I mean on a personal level, I call myself Bal Nigla, meaning I always had more a geschmack in Nigla. Just the way it is for various reasons. Afal Pikein, Kivuven Vegam Pashat, I'm a Daflen, Nishna Bedaflen, it's high, hecht wichtig, it's high priority that you have to learn Chassidus, of course, Pnimis HaTorah, for first and foremost, as a hachana for Beis HaMashiach, so you have to have the te'ima, as the Rebbe explains. You have to have the taste before Mashiach comes of Beis HaTorah, which Mashiach will be Megala in a whole different level. And to stay connected, you have to learn Chassidus and Beis HaTorah. My personal geschmack, as I said, is more Nigla. Chassidus is a little bit more element of Kabbalah soil on my part. Now, in terms of you talk about a Rav, talk about a Shaliach on a more personal level, it's even more important, or most important, to learn Torah, Nigla and Chassidus and Sichas and Amorim, and that's also for a couple of reasons. I said from various perspectives, but not necessarily a priority. You have to learn Torah. First, you need to have material to give over. When you sit and learn, when you sit and meet with another Yid, what are you gonna give him? You're gonna give him politics. Politics, they hear from everybody and anybody. All the talk shows, a whole day. From those, if somebody's into politics, and B'chal, it's not a good idea for the most part to sit and discuss politics. But your achrayus and your shlichus and your purpose is to inspire a Yid with Torah. They're not going to get it anywhere else. And then you have to learn yourself. And the more you learn, the more it's buttered, it's clear, the more things come up in your, when you meet with somebody, that you have what to give them. And it's appreciated. And the world is thirsty for that. And you never know the the sort of perpetual effect of that. That's one thing. Number two, for yourself. In order to remain yourself, I did the Torah lemiflat lebala, in order for you to not absorb the grobkeit for the Welt, but on the contrary, to be a mashpia rather than a mushpa, you must stay connected to Torah, and more specifically, you must stay connected to the Rebbe Sichos and the Rebbe's Torah. That is the Torah as it is directed for our generation. It is the b'chein intellectually and b'poyel mamish in terms of hadracha, and that I personally also have a tremendous geschmack in the Rebbe Sichos, the Sichos, and so on. It also, for me personally, brings back sort of hergeshim and moments or time that I spent with the Rebbe personally. But that is important for every chassid. You're asking me as a Rav, as a shliach, but that is important for every chassid. It's important for every Jew, every Yid, to be connected to Torah in general, and specifically as it is channeled through us, through the Nosi Ador, through the Rebbe. This is not just sort of tifa groisa isis of iskashus, which it is, but it's also a practical, necessary, a must for staying on target, staying focused, both in dealing with our own Yetzer Hara and dealing with the influences that are out there, or even if you don't have a big Yetzer Hara, just knowing, staying on target, staying on the mission of what we need to do.
So that's, okay, to me, it's more the hashkafa and the hadracha of the ruach HaTorah in general of this dir. But what I'm trying to get to, my specific question is, because every person has their own unique characteristics, their own unique koiches and seichel, etc., and what speaks to them, what they feel comfortable with. So if I believe every person, if they knew what was out there in Torah, they could find an area that they feel at home over there. They feel this is something that I would spend the rest of my life breathing. So I'm sure everyone has that. That if some people aren't zeicha, to reach that for whatever reason, or they're too busy, they don't know it exists, they lost cheshek, whatever it is, they're traumatized in yeshiva, I don't know what happened. But so that's something that, as a yid, you have to find because you have your chelik in Torah. That's what your chelik means. That's your limb, so to speak. You're that limb. So that's why I'm curious in general. Every person, what they have to offer in Torah as their personal relationship, as their what they bring into the world at Torah perspective. So that's why I'm curious if there's anything you'd like to share when we get to that.
So if you're asking me generally or me personally?
For yourself personally, correct.
So, I mean, for myself personally, I like to share those my preferences. There's sometimes things you have to share. We have to share. It's avasha. It's what's called for. Personally, I like to share things that speak to me personally, that I myself appreciate, that I myself enjoy, appreciate, touched me.
You mean like in a lesson wise?
Well, of course, it depends. It depends on the interaction. It depends on what you're doing. You know, who you're talking to. If somebody never is going through a crisis, okay, so then you have to share with them in your. I'll give you an example. One day I'm sitting here in the office, and a mother comes over. I'm in the office. I come to the office. The mother comes over, no appointment, just knocks on the door to the front office here. Tells the secretary she's here with a teenager. Kid was probably 17 years old at the time, maybe. I sort of knew the family, but not really close in terms. And she says, I have an issue. Is the rabbi available? Okay. So I say, so they asked me, a distraught mother. She was distraught. So I say, sure, I'll make the time. And so they come in. And what's the story? The teenager's psychologist, who I somewhat knew, the teenager psychologist told the mother to bring this kid to the Chabad rabbi. What was the problem? The kid is a reiner Mishigasenkop. The kid, a sickness went into his head. Like the famous story with the kid who decided he's a chicken and is going to sit under the table. Similar to that. The kid decided that he's not talking. Everything is signed, everything is writing, not talking. Finished. He had his arguments why it's not good to talk. It's not like, remember we heard the story, the guy who said lies and his tikkun was a Kiddush Red. That wasn't the story. Stop. I'm throwing in Yiddish over here. The kid, a sickness went into his head that he's not talking. So they come and they sit in my office. Psychologist is sending him to me. So why is he sending him to me? I'm not a professional psychologist, right? He understood, the psychologist, to his credit, understood that he did what he has to do, and now it's time to send him to the rabbi. So I sat down with this kid, sitting right here, right in the office, and I started to tell him, Al Pi Torah, all the Mailas Hadibur, starting with Brias HaOdam, where the Targum says, Vahi HaOdam L'Nefesh Chai, a person became a living being, says the Targum, Ruach Memalala, a speaking being, and all the milas of Torah and the power and the strength of a human being in his koyach hadibur. And the Eibishter created the world after with dibur. Discussion. That was basically the toich and the gist of the conversation. The next morning, the mother calls me up. The kids started to talk. She called me up with great joy and great excitement. Thank you, Rabbi. The kids started to talk. So here, you're taking a specific Inyan and Torah that was applied to that situation. In the world of Shlichus, the world of Rav, and so on and so forth. In terms of, personally, that's in general, and that's things that where you have a chavivas, chofetz liba, that when something that you think about and personalize, and I think that's a point that is worth sharing. Baruch Hashem, there's so much material. First of all, the Rebbe, the Goss and the Rebbe poured, and today there's so many write-ups and so on. So often we just repeat what we read. It's not the same. You have to think about those things. Sometimes you have no time. Okay, you spit out what you took in. But if it's something that you yourself think about, and you internalize it, and you personalize it, and then you share it. So first of all, for yourself it's good, but even for someone else, it's a lot more impactful, effective, and so on. Have I finally answered your question? Not yet.
I'm just going to clarify.
Not yet. That's fine.
Maybe I just want to clarify because
yes.
I find that it's very hard nowadays because we have so much access to information and everything's printed that it's easy to get lost. And you find yourself just going through a lot of information, and ultimately your mind is not really adapting to the information that you're absorbing because it's just so much. You never really get to take one thing at a time, develop it in your mind, let your mind develop at the same time. There's two things happening. Is information developing in your mind, or the other way around?
So that's why. So that's important. That's why I'm saying. In yeshiva, there's the girsa and there's iyun. So you have to the human brain, and especially today with the the smartphone and the games and so on, we want our brain to constantly be engaged in something new because we need to be stimulated. As a result, the union of stopping at something or really thinking about it is sometimes lost because we want something exciting. We want to go further, and we all have that sort of. I don't know. I definitely have that sort of taiva, sometimes a weakness, and instead of taking the effort, what's called yagiyah b'Torah. Yagiyah b'Torah is important. I mean, there's no Chassidish Maisa that they sent a Chassidish story. They sent a yid to go over to Dam for the Yomad. Became to be a chazan. So he starts off and says, "Hoidul Hashem, Kiriv Shmai," right? Hoidul Hashem, praise God, call on His name, and he stops. He doesn't go further. He stops davening. So everybody, how the crowd gets. If somebody's kratzing, if somebody's taking too long davening, everybody starts screaming, "No, no, no, no!" So he turns back and in Yiddish he says, "Asem good dov, was darf ich gehen weiter." I'm content in this spot. I just said praise Hashem and call on His name. I'm good here. I don't have to go further. So there is that part that is necessary when learning Torah for based on the reasons we've already discussed. If you think about it, that's important for that as well, that you sit down and you internalize. And that's why you have to have the discipline. And I would also say you connect to a certain Magid Shur or a couple of Magidei Shurim that they resonate with you, that you appreciate how they think and how they teach something. Everybody has theirs. Today there's a belt you choose. You could dabble in sometimes when you're in the ocean you drown instead of drinking. So you have to find out, okay, what is the cup for me that I could drink, and there's a wonderful choice of Magidei Shurim. So you pick, whether it's in person or online, and that becomes your Shurim Kavuyim, in addition to the other Limudei Torah that you do.
That's a good point. That's something I didn't touch upon. You're speaking, even mitzad a mentor, a Rebbe, you have to try to focus in on one thing at a time, because we have access to so many Rebbes nowadays.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but in the Mishnah it says Aseh L'chol Rav. It doesn't say Aseh L'chol Rabbonim.
Right.
You could have many people, but Aseh L'chol Rav.
Right. So now the same thing nowadays, because we have so much Svarim printed and stuff like that. Really, every sefer you're going through, that's your Rebbe at that moment, because it's a way of thinking. It's a train of thought, a specific train of thought. So that's why, usually to give us that human stability, we need to find something that we feel this is like what our day revolves around. This train of thought, not jumping from one thing to another. That's why I don't know. Maybe you feel you answered my question, but I'm curious if you have something that you found that gives you that comfort to feel that this is something that I relate with on a darg of my intellectual level, my irrigation, and it gives me that what's the word for it? Quenching of my thirst in a stable way. Not something that's just like everyone nibbles from in the head.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, I'm not here to share who I listen to. Only because everybody should make their own choices.
Yeah, ideas. I'm curious because people could get ideas from other people. This.
If they want to hear who are some of the people I recommend.
Not necessarily a Rebbe. It could be a sefer. An Aryan Torah.
So there are people I like to listen to, or like to listen here or there. It depends also what the objective of me listening to them to. If it's for myself and just for myself, which, by the way, talking about myself, I'm sharing this, that for me personally, the most enjoyable time and best time for me to learn Torah is Shabbos morning. Wake up early and learn Torah then, because there's no phones. There's no distractions. It's relatively quiet, and typically I'll spend quite a bit of time Shabbos morning, not to exclude other times of the day, But other times of the day, there's distractions, whether it's Mapoil or the mind is not at rest, because there's any moment someone could call, there's an issue, whatever it's, but Shabbos morning, in the free, that's just a personal practice that maybe might be inspire somebody to do that as well. At that time, usually the kids are still sleeping, although sometimes a kid wakes up, and that's a beautiful thing. He comes down, he sees that the Tata sits in land, which is a very important thing, that a kid comes and sees that Tata sits in land. You know, it's very wichtig, very important. But you need time for yourself also, where you sit and learn. So, so that's that. Just what comes to mind in terms of Magid Shurim, there's a lot of wonderful Magid Shurim out there. It depends on what level, depends what you want to listen to, depends Nigla, Chassidus, and so on. So, you know, some of the people, obviously when it comes to Chassidus, Rabbi Elkan, it's in Yiddish. Rabbi Elkan is sort of a cut above. Today there are Chassidus, I think it's called, and there's apps. I mean, the other day I was listening for a shir on a series from Chaim Shalom, I think Deitch from Yerushalayim, has his own sort of unique style. The Melech Tzvibel, that's in Chassidus, with another few very fine Magid Shurim that I happen to get to. There might be many out there that I didn't even get a chance to get to, but they, give great Shurim in Chassidus. In English, and of course, there's Yossi Jacobson, Vasala Vesenshen. He gives it's a certain style. I mean, to be honest, there's only so much that I personally can handle of that style. Right. It's Jacobson Yossi is amazing, and he does good. For me personally, I like to listen to him. Mizman Lizman, he's mostly in English. There is Shnei Ashkenazi he has a very beautiful way of how he presents a sikha, a weekly sikha in his parsha. That's in Hebrew. Vernoch. There's also from the non-Lubavitcher world people who I like to listen to. I like to listen to Rabbi Asher Weiss's shurim, a lot of times in Halacha, one of the biggest poskim, Shibbos Manenu. I like to listen to Hershel Schechter. Vernoch.
Any svarim that you enjoy, that you would pick up anytime, that you feel comfortable with?
So everybody has their shurim today. Baruch Hashem, between Chitas and Rambam, there's not that much time left, unless somebody shares something. But there are svarim that I always love. The basic svarim, Likutei Torah, Chassidische Parsha Devach. These are all basics and necessities. Sort of beyond that. There's svarim that I like to pick up. I like to learn. There's the Chumash, I think, what is it called? The Chumash Hamavur or something that's done a beautiful job in putting together Mefarshim on the Chumash. I will say that in English, Yankee Tauba's Chumash that came out last year, only on Bereshis, in my opinion, is the best English comprehensive Chumash that's out there. Even rivals, I would say, some of the modern Chumashim in Hebrew and their Likut. It's a fantastic Chumash.
What do you find unique about it?
The Likut HaMefarshim, the scope and how it's presented of Mefarshim in terms of from the Rishonim to Achronim to Chassidische, Chabad Chassidus, broader Chassidus, the amount of work and collection of insights, Pirushim, in the Torah. I'm not aware that there's even a Chumash in Lashon Kodesh, because there are wonderful Malaktim and Churim we have here in the Shul. I think it's called the Chumash Hamavur. I'm not sure.
From
Oz V'Hodar, which is a great Chumash that has a likut of Mefarshim on the Chumash itself, meaning on the Parsha, and then on Rashi as well. It's a beautiful Chumash, and there's other very nice Chumash Malaktim. That's one of the best ones of how they did that likut. But in terms of a Chumash that takes all Barshim, especially in English, I don't think there's a better Chumash than that Chumash. Unfortunately, right now it's only on Chumash Bereshis. You should be Matzliach. I remember actually talking to Yanki. Yanki's a Chaver from childhood, probably 10, 15 years ago. And I told him, there is no chumash that a yid could pick up and get sort of kol Torah kula from different kivunim. And he said to me then, I'm working on it. So I was actually very happy to see that it came into fruition.
It's not too much. It's not too much information.
Why is it too much?
I'm asking you, how did he set it up? Like in.
I think he did a wonderful job.
Okay. I've never looked at it. I'm just asking.
He did a wonderful job. Obviously, a person could choose to learn three insights on the parsha or not, or more. But it's a beautiful chumash. And okay, depends how far you want to go. If you want to do more lomdus. I mean, as a kid, I loved learning as a kid. I still do, but I'm saying starting already from a young buck. I loved learning. I loved learning the ktos, and I loved learning the Rabbi Yosef Engel, who the Rebbe also. Rabbi Yosef Engel is brought in, especially in certain Yesodis the Kinyonim. The Rebbe has a chavivus for Rabbi Yosef Engel's approach. I mean, so felt nicht gesorgt, there's Baruch Hashem, when you have extra time on a Yom Tov and so on, and you want to sit down and learn things, there's Malaktim, there's a lot of beautiful svarim that are out there.
Okay.
But it's a little bit my sort of sphere.
Yeah, trying to open up.
And probably more, but that's what comes to mind right now.
Okay. I'm just trying to open up and broaden for the Olam people that, that don't necessarily have the time to look for things, just to get ideas from people in their practical lives, what they can relate to. Everyone can relate to who knows what,
Right, so it depends on the person. Depends on what level they're
correct,
at.
That's what I'm
depending if they're a beginner's level, yeshiva bucher, advanced level.
Right.
For somebody, for them to just learn chayenu, visadarf design is wonderful, is fantastic. And sometimes for even advanced yeshiva bucher to learn chayenu, visadarf design is also a good thing. There's just, and I'll also add that because we also have so much of the Rebbe's Torah, and especially sometimes a lot of times the Rebbe's Torah is put into sound bites, which has its place, but it's not enough. So even let's say learning a sikha, learning a kutei sikhas, if you want to really learn a sikha properly, from time to time, or depending how much time you have, to learn a sikha 3-4 times. Over and over again with the Horace, and if you have even more time to go over with the ayins and all that, and the A's, is also a very. I haven't done it in a while. I do sometimes learn a sikha twice, and then to use the Yiddish or the Chassidish sort of lexicon as leicht Gott anders. It illuminates in a whole different way by you, and then you can share with others. But if you have the time and the ability and so on to take a sikha, learn it again and again, and learn it with the makoiris and so on, it's a whole different sikha, a whole different reichkeit, it has a whole different richness, and I recommend it for myself and for those listening to this interview.
Okay. Shakoyach.
Okay. Shakoyach for the opportunity. The Eibusha should give us all the resolve and the bracha to be able to find both the time bekamus ube'echus, to be matzliach and limud Torah, and from there everything else will find its place.
Amen, amen. They're fine.